Hi, I'm Romi.
And I'm Nicole.
We are two businesswomen, two colleagues, two friends who had an idea and decided to do something with it. Over the past 2 years, we've built the Daily Drip, a media platform and community for the modern South Florida businesswoman.
From Palm Beach to South Beach, we've built an audience of thousands of local business owners, CEOs, founders, executives, and more. And we did it 100% organically.
Whether it's through our blog, weekly newsletter, social media, events, or even this podcast, our mission is to offer a daily drop of inspiration as you pursue your dreams.
People ask us all the time how we did it and why we did it. Join us as we bring you along our journey and the journeys of so many other incredible local businesswomen here on Her Pursuit.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Her Pursuit podcast. And this is actually the second part of a two-part series. We kicked it off with motherhood with a little bit of business mixed in. This part is more about entrepreneurship and motherhood and what that has looked like. I'm joined again by Lauren Klein, Flourish Law Group, Kelly Toliday, R&R, and Nicole Cumberbatch from the Motherhood Village. And I think it's kind of interesting because I've really kicked off more of my entrepreneurship journey as my kids are older. I did a little bit though, and I never really thought about it, which is funny. I worked as a photographer when my kids were little because it allowed me the opportunity to bring my kids with me. I didn't have to find help. I actually would put them to task so that I can make it all work. But for me, building my entrepreneurship journey with my kids being older, it's been really kind of special because they're so integrated into what I'm doing and they're really able to understand the long hours, the stress, like in a different way, like I can say to them, like, this is just not a day, and then talk to them about it. Like my son and I will have real conversations about things I might be struggling with or something that came up, and then having them see an anniversary event and witness, what I've been building and putting together. Wait a second, like this is why she's strung out and tired all the time. Or look at what she's been doing when she's not home for dinner this night. So it's been kind of interesting for me to do this at the later part of my life. I'm really interested to hear how entrepreneurship has affected all of your motherhood journey and what that looks like. Now I'll start with you.
Loaded question, because I didn't start out as being an entrepreneur, corporate career, mama through and through since I was working at a bank at 16. So it's been embedded in me for young, obviously I'm 40 now, so long time. But I guess to keep it really high level and not going so far, it's affected me because it has allowed me to have more freedom. And because I have something special with the Motherhood Village, which ties to being a mom, it's a little different. So I guess I'll also bring in my fractional CFO work that I do because I still have a client that I do for that work. So goodness, I don't even know. Like I feel like I'm still learning along the way, but how it has affected me, I guess it's just allowing me to know that I have to be more intentional with my time and setting more boundaries. So in part one, we were talking about how to balance it all, and there's really no true sense of balance, but it's really just being more intentional with my time and boundaries, and understanding, especially more so because it is a business. So it's almost not end all be all, but this is our livelihood, right? I have my fractional CFO work, which I says pays the bills. It contributes to the family. Then I have the Motherhood Village, which is this kind of startup thing that's like on this precipice of going up and it's going there. So what does that look like? But there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so many hours to pour into me and my husband and my son. So I've just gotten to try and really be smart with my time, schedules, setting really clear boundaries for my own burnout, because I think becoming an entrepreneurship is very similar to motherhood in that it's very isolating and you don't know where to turn to. So I've also been very intentional about where my energy goes and who I'm allowing in my circle to influence me, which is similar to motherhood. So it's like almost the same trajectory of finding my village in entrepreneurship and finding my village in motherhood. And now that my husband and I are kind of talking about possibly having another one and letting the universe do what it do, I'm not scared because I now have the village I created for myself, that I'm like, hey, I created the village for a mom to have. So I guess, yes, to answer the question is just being more intentional with my time, who I'm spending my time with, what I'm doing with it, and setting clear boundaries.
And I think what's really kind of cool about your scenario is your entrepreneurship journey is the result of becoming a mom.
Exactly. Correct.
You're operating, you created something that you needed as a mom that has become a business, but it is a resource for moms that in all different, whether you're single or you're not single or you're a working mom, you're a stay-at-home mom, whatever it is, it's kind of cool to see that your journey. And so as you grow your community, you're learning alongside as you're experiencing it in real time.
Oh yeah, it's helped me as a mother. Like I say all the time, and sometimes I feel like I sound like a broken record, especially in the support groups. I'm like, well, I talked to this person on my podcast, but it has helped me. If no one listened to my podcast episodes, at the end of the day, it has helped me because I'm taking all these nuggets.
Which is the success of your podcast and your community is that, and we've learned that with the Daily Drip, is you're creating something that you want and need, in the sense that, like, we were like, how do we create a space for other women who feel like us and who are lacking resources, whatever the case may be. And so it automatically attracts the people you want to be connecting with.
But it's a lot of work. And like I said, same trajectory, very isolating, very overwhelming. I want to do it all. Do I need to outsource? But then then you got to pay the bills. What does that look like? We're mission focused. So many things.
And it's fluid. Like parenthood, right? Yes. Like what you think your motherhood journey, like what you think your motherhood journey is going to look like. I mean, you can't be stuck on either or. Like you can't be stuck on what your vision of your business is, and you can't be stuck on what you think, because your kids are going to surprise you each and every day by doing something. You're like, no, we had a plan. We had an unspoken agreement that this was how we were going to do things. And now you're doing this. You've turned another year older. You've entered a new phase, and I wasn't ready for it.
And just like your business, how many of us have business plans that maybe look entirely different, or you're like, wait, someone gives you an idea. We were just talking about traveling, like, oh my gosh, we could do this. And that's motherhood, and that's you have to pivot when you need to pivot, and understanding when to back down, when to say I can only give 20%. So that's my soapbox right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree with that. I always say, and I think we can all probably agree on this, is motherhood and entrepreneurship is, like you said, the exact same. It's you're birthing something into life, and you're trying to mold and guide it into what you would love to see it be. And hopefully it's received well by other people. That's basically what that is, right?
Yeah, and it gives you profits. And exactly. Yes.
For me, how motherhood has kind of evolved with entrepreneurship, I mentioned in part one, I've always been an entrepreneur. Like ever since I was like 7 years old, I was the girl. My good family friend's mom just told me at my sister's wedding last weekend, you would come over to my house and just say, get the table out. We're making a lemonade stand, Patty. This is what we're doing today. And I've kind of always been that way. So even when I've had kind of that traditional 9-to-5 job, I've always had something on the side. And so for me with motherhood, and when I decided in October 2021 to officially quit my decade in marketing and move completely over into, at the time, was a coaching business for mothers, I've kind of always seen problems that other people are having, including myself, and trying to solve solutions to that. That's what entrepreneurship, most of us do, is we see problems that we're currently having and we want to solve, and we see that other people want that. And so very similar to what you've said about the boundaries, about creating boundaries for yourself. And I think that's with motherhood as well, is just really being clear, especially with my business, which is in the travel industry. I could go for 4 or 5 different retreats or group tours at a time if I wanted to, but then I'm gone for, there was one year in 2022, I think it was, where I counted it up, and including the trips that I had taken with my husband, I think I was gone for like 2.5 months of the year. And my daughter was born in September 2022. So there was a lot of movement where I was like, you know what, this isn't really serving my daughter to be away that long. It's not serving me to be away that long. And so now for me, I've had to create the boundaries of, I can be away for 2 trips out of the year, and one of those could be for business, and one of those might be with my husband, or it might be 2 with the business. I make a lot of calls, especially with the Daily Drip. There are so many amazing events, amazing workshops, amazing parties, and I have to make the call, like, am I going to leave bedtime for this? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And so the boundaries is a huge part of it, and it filters in with the lessons that you learn in motherhood, and how to create boundaries, like you mentioned before, like putting the blinders on to what other parents are doing, and just saying, this is what I'm doing as a business owner, this is what I'm doing as a mother, and really having that like self-worth and self-esteem within yourself to know, like, this is what's best for my family, this is what's best for my business. And like, there is no like work-life integration. Like, it's happening all at the same time as an entrepreneur, especially when you're so passionate about what you're doing. And yeah, it's like you said, they're still learning. It's a lifelong journey of just kind of figuring out the balance for you and what feels good for you at any given season of life.
Yeah. And what's interesting is all three of you actually, what you do professionally is it's interesting to me how it really is connected to being a mother in some capacity. I mean, and I think the way you approach, and you'll speak to this, so I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm curious to know how you approach estate planning specifically now that you're a mom, right? I mean, that's just going to hit different. And to your point, travel. How does it look different now as somebody who was like wanderlust, right, for such a long period of time and making that adjustment and figuring out how to integrate, and you as well.
Wanderlust. It's true. That
Right.
was that cow.
That's
Right.
my husband's Instagram handle, at Sir Wanderlust.
Well, and because I think it also speaks to us as women and entrepreneurs, how do we hold on to at least some parts of ourselves? Because as moms, I feel like we just turn it all over. We're giving everything we have and then some. It's the most important, that's at least that's the way I operate, right? Like I will just keep giving to my kids. So things like the crossing for me represent something that I do for me. I mean, I do it for people with CF, obviously, but I mean, it is something that is mine, that helps me kind of keep part of my identity of adventurer or, challenging myself, all of that. And so I think it's really interesting how the careers kind of, whether it was on purpose or not, very much align with, I was a photographer because I missed my dad. Like one thing I had after my dad passed were albums and albums of photographs. What I wanted to do was take these kinds of photographs so that other parents would have these moments that were, not scripted, but I loved taking these in the moment shot. Just going to kids' schools. I would go to preschools and just take pictures of their kids enjoying their day. Because what a gift, right? So my journey has always had that tied to it. So yeah. So what's it like to be an estate planning attorney and have your own firm and be a mom?
Well, I mean,
how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you, Nicole, like becoming a mom really inspired my entrepreneurial journey. I've always been entrepreneurial-esque. Like I was the kid with the lemonade stand. And when I was in Big Law, I still had an Airbnb and I was coaching law students. So I was always like, I had my hands in it, but it wasn't until I felt, wow, in this firm, I'm not seen, I'm not supported. And I had issues with my compensation. So I'm like, if I'm going to become a partner where in law firms, typically your partnership comp is very discretionary up to the firm. I'm like, I can't trust them to pay me what I'm worth. We already know women are getting paid significantly less than men. Now I'm a mom. So for me, one of my biggest driving forces beyond just making sure that I could build my own thing was my law partner and I always had this conversation. We were working with the wealthiest of the wealthiest, the top 1% of the 1%, the billionaires and the multi-millionaires. And I said, we need this legal service, estate planning, business planning, not just for those wonderful wealthy clients. They're great. Why doesn't everyone have this in a way that is accessible and affordable and also feels empowering? And so we have very intentionally built a firm that has a name in it, Flourish Law Group, of we want this to be an experience for you, planning for your family, making sure that we're looking at your family, your assets in a way that feels very real, not very transactional and boring and old and crusty, like you think of trust and estates attorneys and like old offices that are really like weird and yellow. Like we're like, no, the color of everything, we want it to feel empowering and we want people to know. Because we have conversations all day, every day, and people don't know. They just don't know what probate is. They don't know what a trust is. So much of what we do is just explaining what all of that is and how it works. And so it really has been huge for me. And it does make it hard because I'm like, I want to spend time with my 2 human babies, but then I have these 2 business babies where I'm working with families and I'm coaching students and I'm trying to not single-handedly change the legal profession I'm partnering, but I want to be a voice for we don't have to do it the same way that we've always done it. We don't have to have mental illness and alcoholism just as like the norm. That doesn't have to be the way it is.
I think so I'm a client of Lauren's and her and her business partner did our estate planning. And something that I always think about is when women either take a pause from their career or they make a shift in their career because of the way that motherhood changed them. This woman that I follow on Instagram at Mother Untitled, she always talks about like that is like a professional and personal development like gap for you to become better at what you do. And I will say like, we have looked into doing estate planning beforehand. It was with kind of a more like stuffy firm. And we were kind of like, we feel like we're like the poor clients. You know, like you walk in and you're kind of just like, oh, they're looking at our accounts just like, what are we doing here, guys? But with you guys, like you explained it in such a way that one, I don't know how it was fun, but it was fun. Like it made us feel empowered. It made us feel like, hell yeah, we're checking off this tick. And it's because you're coming at it from a mother's lens and you're making us feel like we're doing this for our family, for the longevity of our family. And I always say, like, we have so many moms that come on our retreats, on our group tours, who just our past Portugal retreat in June, we had 2 moms. They both had 17-month-old kids. They had never been away from their child ever in the year and a half that their child's been born. And they both walked away. One, I was able to have conversations with them. Like, I know what you're feeling. Let's talk through this. And we worked with them. They both walked away. One woman said her life will never be the same. And on the flip side of that, like what you were saying backstage, was we get a lot of empty nesters who they've never like really done things on their own or without their husband or without their children. And we get a lot of moms from all stages of life. And because my business partner doesn't have kids yet, but because I have children, I'm able to kind of put a different lens on it that another teacher that might not have children or whatever it may be, like you're able to come at it from a different lens and you're able to make somebody feel really seen and really heard, and it changes your business if you're able to use what you've learned through motherhood. I'll say it right now, 3.5 years in, I'm no expert, but if you're able to take what you've learned about yourself, what you've learned about your children, what you've learned through this whole process, and use it as part of your strength, even though it's really hard and there's a lot of tears and a lot of other bodily fluids going on, like it can really change the trajectory of your business in a way that, although maybe sometimes it feels like you're taking 3 or 4 steps back or things are going backwards or slowing down, if you're able to use that time to learn about yourself and learn about your business and your clients, I have just found the last year has just been an explosion without me even trying. And I really do like to credit my time in the trenches of motherhood to that.
And I think what's special about all of you, and I think that's also what is special about the Daily Drip, and a little nod to it in the sense that I would argue that every woman who's a part of it, especially within the thought leadership part, but I think it goes to saying across the entire community, is impact and mission driven is something that we all really stand for. And what I think that as moms, especially, we have a responsibility to be honest and real and sharing our experiences, and then being able to add that perspective to your business. Like for someone who you're speaking to about, like for most people, they think if they talk about it, it's like going to bring it on. In Yiddish, we call that a nahora, right? So if they go speak to an estate planning attorney, it means I'm going to die. So they misunderstand that. So having to be able to come in and say, we hope to never look at this. Yeah. However, this is how we know that your kids are going to be taken care of. This is all of this, like you're connecting with people that are traveling. And I will say that for the empty nesters, I'm not an empty nester yet because my kids just won't leave, which I'm okay with. I love it. I've never had a fuller nest in my entire life. It just keeps getting bigger. But when my son was getting close to going to college, for me, it was a real identity trigger. And that was sort of the beginning of my real mental health, like personal development journey, because my son and I, they called us, I can't remember what the term was, but very interconnected in a good way, but also what was causing some real issues in terms of my identity. Like all of a sudden he's leaving, like, yeah. And it was like, well, who am I if I'm not Jonah's mom, if I'm not Abby's mom? We were enmeshed. And we have a very special and unique bond. I've always felt like Jonah was like the universe's way of righting a wrong. They like kind of fucked me on the dad card, so like we're gonna kick it up on the son card. But I say that to say that, like, again, with identity, right, it really does have an impact. And all of a sudden, as we got closer to that, it was as an empty nester, it was like, well, who am I now, right? Like, what does this all look like? What does this mean? And then how that kind of trickled into entrepreneurship, to be honest.
What I'm hearing too is I think it also boils down to like education of like when you know better, you kind of do better. So I think all of us also are, you're trying to show this experience of like traveling doesn't have to be overwhelming, whether it's as a mom going solo, without her kids and being the anxiety that comes with that, or traveling with your kids, which I remember my first time, and my husband was an avid traveler, and he told me when we started dating, with or without you, I'm going on my trips. So figure it out. Remember, we've had that conversation. I was like, yeah. He's like, no, like I travel. This is what I do, boo. So, come on. But so when our son was born, and then truly, if it wasn't for COVID, we would have been traveling like all the time. But when Jace was 2, we had already been to like how many countries and things. So there's something to say with that. And then with you, the education of really breaking down, we've talked about this on the podcast, of having people see like, it's not just for rich people, or, really understanding what it means to protect your assets. And as overwhelming and anxious as that might feel, you're still protecting your biggest thing, which is your children. And then with the Motherhood Village, of making sure, how can other parents know about estate planning, or that you can travel with your kids, or whatever the information is. So I think it also boils down to education, and really, as a mom, as a business owner, going back to what are those circles that you're in, to really make sure that you're ingesting the right information to be a better mom, to be a better business owner. For me, I think the summit has been the Mount Rushmore of it all, because I just knew I wanted a space for moms to go for personal development, because I felt like there was nothing for that coming from the corporate space of like all the personal development and all the CPEs we have to do, right? As lawyers, as accountants, of like, I have to do this. And I'm like, wait, we have like the hardest job in the world, but there's no place for a mom or dad really to go to pour into themselves, to learn per se, right? And that was really the precipice of the summit. And now Nicole loves to say it's your Super Bowl. And I'm like, and it really is, because that is, I have so much of like what this is going to be going forward. But at the core of it, it's the education part, to hopefully someone can sit there and be like, I didn't know that, but now I'm leaving here knowing more than I did before, to then trickle to them being the best I can be for myself and the little people that I'm raising. So I'm hearing like education and really, and the community aspect of it, right? The community and support between it all.
And the personal, it's interesting because I started my entrepreneurial journey so much later, I wrestled a lot with, I feel like the word imposter syndrome gets thrown around a lot. My resume did not exactly read of anything other than, a couple of entrepreneurial ventures that were mine. But as I went back in like full force, it's like, let's be real. I've been the CEO, the CFO. I've done all the roles and all the positions. And it's very hard because it's very thankless in a lot of ways. Like there's no promotion when you do better. There's no raise. And a lot of the time, yes, the reward, the gratifying part is that your kids aren't assholes, I guess. But beyond that,
or still want to spend time.
Or still want to, well, so yeah. And I will say that, like, to me, that's the win. I have a 21 almost year old and a 22-year-old, and they choose to be with us. They choose to spend time. That's all I ever wanted. And they choose to be with each other, which was the other thing that was critically important. But even to this day, and Nicole actually has been probably the most impactful person in my life when it comes to this, is being able to recognize that like there were a lot of things and skills that I developed as a mom and through all these years that are very transferable, whether or not as a society we recognize that. Like I wrestled with the fact that the things that I'm good at are not things that I was taught. I didn't go to school to do business development. Nobody taught me how to do it. I learned it actually. You talk about how we learn from watching our parents. It was as an adult and through personal development that I was like, oh my God, like my parents used to take me to all their work events. I went with my dad to a topping party, where you put the last floor in the building, and I watched him schmooze with other people and the way he made people feel and the way he talked to them. And I was like, oh my God, this is how I learned to do this. And I didn't even know I was learning it. And so it's for the women who are out there that are sort of coming into this a little bit later, like there's a lot of transferable skills that we're learning as parents that really are going to help us be better at our business. Yes. Patience and the way we view things and the lenses that we look at things. I think it makes us better.
That's so true, because I went back to the pivoting, but it's so true how many times I'm like, okay, this isn't working out, or what's again best for my son? Well, what's again best for my not customers, my community, my moms, my clients, my whatever that is, of like, what is that? And knowing like it has to work. And if it doesn't, again, pivoting and saying, and being adaptable. And that is motherhood.
And embracing that motherhood shift and knowing that all the things that you're learning, either you're helping your community, which maybe like that's your business, or just your friends, like whatever you're learning and just sharing and supporting and being honest and not sugarcoating it and just being like, this is the real of parenthood, motherhood, entrepreneurship, whatever
unfiltered.
it might be. Yeah, and embracing those identity changes.
And I think the embracing the seasons, embracing the change. We talk a lot at R&R about seasonality and not just the physical seasons, because it's hard for us in Florida to know. We've got wet and dry. That's basically it. It's hot. Yeah, exactly. But just knowing, like, I remember listening to a podcast and there was the CEO of the blow dry bar. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, she was like, I didn't even fully start blow drying people's hair till my kids were at least 5 years old. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because as business owners, especially if you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, you feel like there's this momentum that you have to ride. And if you hop off that train, you're not going to be able to get back on. And so hearing people's stories who are wildly successful, and also like Romi, you're a huge expander for me, like just in the parenthood space and the motherhood space, and just hearing stories of people that are like, yeah, I took a substantial break from, or just a pause in my business just so I could spend that time with my kids. And then to hear them have successful kids and successful businesses, I think learning, as you said, when to pivot, like, okay, for the next year, I'm actually going to not put my daughter in daycare and just stay at home with her. And that might mean that I'm at 20% capacity with my business. And then I know when I do put her in daycare, I'm ready to go again. And knowing that there's no end stop to your business, because I think that's hard. We think as soon as I stop posting on Instagram, no one's going to know where I am and what I'm doing. And just knowing that, like, it's okay to embrace that seasonality. It's okay to adapt. It's okay to pivot, knowing what your customers need at any given time and being able to adjust to that. And at the end of the day, knowing, you mentioned the word freedom in your first answer to the first question. No, for me, that's my number one value, is the freedom, right? And so a couple weeks ago, I had an opportunity. I think I was going to go work at a cafe for a few hours while I had the time. And a friend from school was like, hey, they're doing yoga at school at 9 a.m. Do you want to come do it with your child? And I was like, yep. I literally skirted the car around, did a U-turn, walked into yoga. And I was like, that's why I do what I do. And that's why I make the decisions that I can, so that I can choose to be at the 9 a.m. yoga class with my 3-year-old. And then I can also choose to take that week retreat with our clients, because they've been asking to go to Peru for, 3 years. And it's like being able to make those adjustments as you need to and embrace that your output levels will be different.
It's interesting you say that, because I do remember, people have sort of put a spin on this entrepreneurship journey that, like, you get more time.
Exactly.
And I think it's really important for anybody who's listening. It's not about more. So, for me, like I said, my mom was always present, but she was also sitting up in bed at night at 11 p.m. doing paperwork and still working, because at 4:00, she wanted to do something with us. And I remember, like, about a couple of months ago, Abby was home for her break, and the morning she was going back, and I was still in super grind mode. She's like, hey, do you want to run to the beach with me, like, before I go back to school today? And I was stressed because I actually had a lot going on. And I was like, yeah, I fucking do. And I dropped everything, and it was pouring rain, and we had the best time. And I thought, like, these are the things that are so critically important. So if you're in a position where you're working the way you're working now while your kids are younger, that is okay. Just make those moments. I used to pick up my kids randomly and separately during the week and just play hooky. So I would pick Jonah up on a Thursday. I'd be like, don't tell your sister, it's not happening again. And we would go see a movie, because that was what he liked to do. And I would pick her up, and we would do something that she liked to do. And carving those, like, moments out so that you can then do all these other things.
I love how you said that, because freedom doesn't always mean more time. Freedom just means the opportunity to choose and have the choice, because that is so true. Because can we make an announcement here right now? Because I am so, not sick and tired, but social media has amplified. There's so many people that want to be business owners, and I think it's great. But I'm like, why? Because I think you really need to know your why, because this is fucking hard. Yeah. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. And I know some people who don't have kids are like, oh yeah, and then you add motherhood. But to be a mother is hard. To be a caregiver of your parents, maybe you don't have kids. There's so many things that are hard. And then when you put them together, like, this shit is hard. And I think it glorifies it so much. To your point before, one of you had said, like, thinking social media and parenting is this. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurship, which is why I live for conversations of people that are so real. Like, listen, it took me 10 years. I love the Gary V's when he speaks on that. Like, everyone wants to get rich so fast. podcasts and things that they're going to be like the next viral. And that's like 1 in 1,000, like to really truly build a community, like what we're trying to build. This is a marathon, and there's going to be so many people joining it. I'm sure even retreats, everyone wants to do retreat, and you're like, okay, to do it the way that you know that, or you feel needs to really give it the proper, maybe even with the estate planning, like, yeah, but no, to really get the people that you want. So I just want to put that PSA out there that anyone listening, this shit is hard, and to truly, truly be able to be the best mom, wife, daughter, friend, whatever the different roles in your life, to really recognize that and understand when you need to take a step back and how important it is for your mental health. Because I will say I never struggled with anything truly mental health until I became a mom, and I had anxiety that hit me. We didn't have COVID and I didn't leave my house. I remember tried leaving with my son, and I was afraid of like the judgment and the shame. I'm like, what if he can't stop crying? And everyone's like, oh, this baby. Like my thoughts were through the roof, and I physically couldn't do it. And then becoming an entrepreneur, I never struggled with mental health of even remotely like my self-worth. Never had that until I became an entrepreneur. And I was like, holy shit, I'm not doing enough. And this, oh, and wait, there's a new group. Oh no, I need to be here. And I'm like, Nicole, how many conversations I've had to myself where I need my Nikki G to be like, come down, Nicole. But that's real. And last week, I just want to say this last part about the mental health about it, because I was at that point where I had so much going on just a week or so ago. And it was Nicole, my friend Maria, and even my husband. And Nicole was like, turn off the noise, let it go. My husband, that's when I told him I got like 20%. You need to like step up. And then voxering my friend Maria of like, I need to just step away, because I was so inundated of, I need to plan this. I was over the selling. I was over the analyzing. I was over the structuring. I was just over it. And to your point, I think it's okay to say when I need to just step away, say, you know what? And that was the best. I came back Monday like, okay, I didn't answer emails. I was just like, I don't care. I binge watched TV. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the most unadulted person. I'm not going to be responsible. I don't give a shit. I'm going to go to bed late. I'm going to wake up late. Like, I don't care. I just needed to like turn it all off. And then I woke up fine. So I want to put that PSA out there.
And the thing is we think that people will notice like that. I remember. So, I mean, because to be fair, like we're all our little self-contained worlds, right? And so if you completely fall off the face of the planet for a year and there's no contact with your community, that might have a problem. But I remember I was doing weekly podcast episodes, editing them all myself, doing all the social media. And it was actually Elizabeth from the Jude agency who was like, you could probably do bi-weekly. And I was like, but people, and she was like, no, I think it's okay. Like you could do bi-weekly and it gives you more time to promote your social. I started bi-weekly this year. No one has knocked on my door. Like, where's the weekly episodes? Like it's okay. Like, and like you said, it takes time. It takes years to build a solid community that will stand behind you. And that's what we've noticed with R&R. Like when we say jump, they say how high. Like we have the best community in the whole world. And it takes a while to be able to build that trust. And so with that trust comes knowing, okay, like they're actually not doing any retreats in the fall. We'll wait for next year. That's cool. Like and that's the power and like the consistency over time without having to have that rush of, oh, well, this company's doing that retreat and they're doing one in Morocco and so-and-so's doing an online platform and whatever. It's like doing the little things over time that feel good for you, that's sustainable. And then that's what builds that trust in the community. When you do say, you know what? This year we're not doing this. Every year we do this one event and we're actually not going to do it this year and it's going to be okay. Like everything's going to be fine. And it's the same with your kids. Like you don't have to do the 7 sports teams in the fall because you think that's what you're supposed to do. You could say we're going to pick one sport this season and that's what we're going to do as a family because that's what feels good for us. And Susie down the street might notice that you're not there, but it's actually not going to affect your peace. Like you're protecting your peace as a mom and you're protecting your peace as a business owner.
I would say 2 things on that too is I think what's important, and as entrepreneurs, like when you operate from an abundance mindset, you recognize like there are other people doing what you're doing. And that's great that they did that. And that works for their organization, just to be able to say like, there's enough. So great. There's other people doing retreats. There's other people doing that stuff. There's enough for all of us. So I don't need to do 75. And for me, my burnout came in the form of events. The last year was really taxing on me, like to a point where I did not see my family at night, and people would be like, oh, well, your kids are all grown. I'm like, but I'm still their mom. And I still want to spend time. I want to have dinner with my family, but I'm at 7 events a week or more. And it was interesting because my husband said it, Nicole's like it. She's like, just don't go. Like, you don't have to go to another one. No one's going to care. I'm like, no one's going to care. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, okay, let me be clear about that. What I started to like get better about, and I'm really disciplined about it now, is the things that I attend. If I'm taking time away from my family or from whatever it is, it has to check some boxes. Is this serving X, Y, and Z? Whatever that is. Is it serving the daily drip? Is it serving me personally? Like, do I want to be there? And if it's not hitting the mark on those things, knowing that it's okay. Like, there is going to be another 1,000 events down the, like, not all of these things are built with so many opportunities that if I don't show up at 900 different events, that we're going to miss things. And I think that was also part of the stress. It's like, but how am I going to find new members, or how am I going to find new community partners?
Well, because I think it's the FOMO. It's like, but if I don't go, no. And then you have to look at your ROI and say, but is my ROI really that? Of all the events, how many members really, what really worked, which is why the lock-ins, like, there's so much to say that it works for that.
And that's why we shifted, right? We did event marketing for a year because that was a way for us to grow and build our community. And it was amazing. But then it was like, okay, that was great for that year. Now we have to think, reflect, reevaluate what's next.
I'm so happy you said that too, because I think a lot of times there's a misconception, and I'm also tired of, I don't know, I think I'm on my soapbox of things I'm just done with, of like you hearing like, oh, like you know, in your business, and like you don't have to grind. And I'm like, no, like, not that you don't have to grind, but like there's a social media of like, well, it's gonna, like, you're just gonna get it. It's just gonna be easy. And I'm like, and then it like takes care of itself. Like when I joined, I remember joining the chamber, and the Motherhood Village, I didn't even have a pitch. It wasn't even what it is now. I just innately, I was like, I need to connect with that group. And they're like, what is the Motherhood Village? I'm like, well, we're like a community we support. And my first event, and I went to all these hospitals with my flyer, and they're like, who are you? But there's something to say with having the naivete to do that, and the grind and the grit to grow it grassroots, that now all of those people that 3 years ago were like, what is a Motherhood Village? But keeping at it, and then eventually saying, yeah, the chamber events aren't for me, or this isn't for me, but putting in that work. And now how many people I'm collaborating with from the chamber. So I also want to put that out there, that it does take work. It's not going to be easy, but again, it goes back to pivoting and saying, okay, this worked for us for a year. We put in the grind. We did it. Now it's like, all right, we can take a step back.
It's a new grind.
It's a new grind.
We have a really similar situation, and this ties into motherhood perfectly. We started our mini retreats. So it was COVID. We had a whole year of no events, no yoga studios, no international retreats, no nothing. And I was like, I'm sick of this. I want us all to come back together, but in a safe way. So I started mini retreats in my backyard in Pompano Beach. And it was a 3-hour event where I just said, I had a yoga deck already built in our backyard. I said, we're outside. We're going to hang out under the tiki hut. Come if you want, wear a mask if you want. We won't hug. It's all good. 2 people showed up, January 2021. We did a mini retreat every single month for 2 years straight, mostly in my backyard. And then we eventually switched to a bigger venue when we needed more space. But then eventually after year 2, it was once a month for a Saturday, pretty much took the entire day, was set up and breakdown. I turned to my business partner and I said, I can't do this with my kids anymore. I can't spend a whole Saturday away from my children, my husband with his business. And, there's just things. And we said, okay, let's turn it into quarterly. What happened when we started with 20, 25 guests? Because it was every month. They're like, oh, I'll just go to the next one. We did it quarterly. Now there's 40 guests. Now there's 50 guests. Now there's 60 guests. And now we're still doing them quarterly, but it's like we were able to make that pivot because I was like, we still want the importance of being in our community, being out there in front of that's how we get our retreat guests, is people get to have an experience with us. And they're like, wow, we trust you. We love you. We want to go on retreats with you. But it didn't have to be every single month. And because I was like, I need that space. I need that time.
I love to hear this because I'm growing Flourish Law Group, and I'm growing the Wealthy Lawyer Squad. And the Wealthy Lawyer Squad is very much more community based. I'm going to law schools and law firms like, I want to bring wellness and money mindset and all these things into the law. And they're kind of looking at me like, blink, blink, huh? What? But then it's like, yes, but we know we need this. And like the American Bar Association says we need this. And they're just kind of like, huh? And they're not fully getting it yet. But I see, like, Kelly and I did a retreat together a couple months ago. Like, it's starting to happen. So it's so cool to hear, like, it all kind of happening in your businesses, because it's starting to click slowly for mine. So it's very,
Well,
very
like we've talked about when you're
inspiring.
doing the events, if you would have stopped after the 2 people showed up, you would have been deflated. And I've talked about it. My lesson learned in 2021, I would do mom's night out. And in the beginning, for the first couple months, it was just like my mom, and a couple of friends. And I was so deflated because I now know better. Back then I didn't. I was like, oh no, like this can't, on social media, people are gonna be like, oh, it's the same people. That was my story. The Brene Brown again, the story I told myself. Everyone's going to say it's the same people. So I cut it out. Can you imagine if I would have kept those moms night out from 2021, what that could have been, have grown to, if I would have just been consistent with it. Obviously I pivoted to a different way, but we've talked about this of like, even if 2 people show up, if it's what you feel you need to do, work with it. And of course, yeah, if after a while you're like, it's not working, but don't get, well, again, it goes back to, I think, your why. And are you doing it because you think it's going to be the clicks? Are you doing it because you want the engagement? Like, why are you doing it? Because if it's for just the clicks and engagement, yeah, invite your friends and make an event and have the B-roll. But if you're doing it because you want meaningful change, then it's going to take the consistency, continue to do it. So continue to work your magic, continue.
You encouraged me when I did the mom's night out for estate planning, and no one signed up. And I was like, I think I'm going to cancel. You're like, don't cancel it. And then 20 people showed up, like randomly out of the blue. And we had the best conversation and we had wine. I was like, wow, that was amazing.
Now those 20 women can then tell their friends, I just
Yeah.
had this thing. So it's a domino effect.
I want to say one more thing about identity, and I want you guys to like think about me this week. So I'm heading after this to a tax conference that I used to go to every single year. I know. I was like
4th of July weekend.
I know, and I used to do this.
Retreat time.
Wait till you see my out of office. Just email me. It's super cute about we're going to a tax retreat. Yes, we are. It's the 4th of July. But I used to go every year, and I was like super involved. I didn't have kids. I was like the director of every committee. I was speaking at the CLE every year, and it's the first time I'm going back in 5 years. So no one at this retreat has seen me in 5 years for this conference. They didn't, they don't know my kids. They don't know anything. So for me, I'm like very nervous because this is a big identity shift situation for me. So think about me this week I might even see an old boss.
You walk
I
into
don't
that
know.
door, you hold your head high, and I am the owner of Flourish Law Group. Like, we are killing it.
Send me your clients that,
Yes. I
Yep.
love that for
and
you.
also the Wealthy Lawyer Squad. I'm like,
Love
send me
that
all
for you.
your associates.
It's really, really cool. And I'll end this little rant on the evolution. But we recently went to Thailand. We hosted an 8-day retreat in Thailand, and I just brought my whole family with me. The in-laws came from Australia. They helped with the kids while I was on retreat, and we made it work. You're going to this tax conference / retreat, whatever you want to call it. I'll let you say that. But you're bringing your family with you as a holiday, and it's like, this is how we evolve as business owners. This is what entrepreneurship gives us the access and the choice to be able to do, is to pick and choose the things that are going to give us the most bang for our buck, the most, what is it they say, like minimal effort, maximum output, like while bringing our families along for the ride. And not every event is going to be family friendly, but this is why we're doing what we're doing, is to be able to merge it as much as possible.
And get a tax deduction.
Yeah, that's always that.
I think that this is sort of a good way to end this conversation. I do think that there should be parts 3, 4, and 27,000 to go with this. But I will say also, and I say this because I see it, all of us are building communities outside. Like, that's either part of our business, it is our business. And what I think you get when you build it the right way, and I think that we can all attest to that, is that if you have faith in the community you're building, they have faith in you. Part of how we at the Daily Drip have gotten to where we're at is because you guys have had faith in us. If we had to shift something, if we did more of one thing, like, we listen to you, but at the same time, you trust us to navigate this ship. Your mom community trusts you to navigate. And so if you shift and you do something different, they have faith in you. They trust you. And I think that speaks for all of you. And I think that, so anyone out there who, keep going if it's really in your heart. If you really know and believe in what you're doing, the other stuff, it's almost just like, it's the strategy and whatever. But at the core, you care about the community you're serving, and in return, they care about you. So this was amazing. I think that It's pretty unbelievable, the parallels and the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. And I love that you guys were all here to weigh in on this. I think it was really a very fascinating conversation, and you guys are amazing. I love you all. So thank you for coming back for another episode of the Her Pursuit podcast, and stay tuned for the next one.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Her Pursuit. You can catch a new episode every other Wednesday. Please don't forget to subscribe or follow so that you don't miss out on any of the good stuff.
We love bringing you free content and value to help inspire and motivate you. So if you enjoyed this episode, throw us a thumbs up, leave us a rating, a review, and send this to a friend who you think would enjoy it. Your support is so important to us, and we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So thanks for listening. Talk to you in 2 weeks.